Time for another board game review, and this time we have the game Tanto Cuore. This was sent to me by Japanime Games and is designed by Masayuki Kudo. Tanto Cuore is a deck-building card game for 2 to 4 players. The players take the roles of masters of the house, employ a lot of cute maids, and are served by them while slowly filling out their house. But take care, the maids can become sick or get bad habits. When the game ends, the player who has the most victory point gaining maids in his staff is the perfect master and the winner of the game. Let me show you how to play. So in Tanto Cuore, you are masters of the house, employing cute maidos and being served by them. It's basically a deck building game with maids. So we have the setup here. I'll explain all these cards in a second. But let's just kind of go over the flow of the game. You start the game with a deck of 7 love cards. Love are what you use to get new maids. And you also start with 3 Colette cards, which I'll explain later. There are 4 phases: the starting phase, serving phase, employ phase, and dismiss phase. Once you finish all 4 phases, that's the end of your turn. There are 3 types of maid cards. These are maid chiefs. They mainly give you victory points. They have little effect during the game. Like here's Colette, just worth 1 point each. But then we have Marianne Soleil, who is worth 6 victory points for each one of those you have. However, she has no effect otherwise, so she can clog up your deck when you buy her. The general maids, these blue cards, are the cards that form the core game. You play these during your serving phase, and they all have different effects. We'll get into these later. Private maids, these black frame ones, are special. They never enter the discard pile or deck. These are chamber maids that sit beside your play area, and they usually give you some kind of special power. Playing a maid card from your hand costs 1 serving. So each player has 1 serving. You can think of it as like an action per turn. Certain maids generate more servings, and so that allows you to play more maids to serve them. So let's look at like an example of a card here. So here we have Genevieve d'Aubigny. And here, this is how much the card costs to buy for love. There's no card effect here. However, these symbols here represent either draw, love, serving, and employment. Love cards, here's a 2 love. It costs 4 love to buy it. Whenever you play this card, you get 2 love. Love points are used to employ new staff. They are mostly played during the employ phase, but can generally be played at any time. During a turn, you play as many of those love cards as you want to add to your current love. So let's say we draw our first hand here. So we have 2 Colettes, 3 love. I could use 3 love to buy anything, any card that costs up to 3. So I could buy like one of these, or I could buy one of these. You can't buy more than 1 card unless you have more than 1 employment. We'll get into that later. Usually, by default, you can only buy 1 card per turn. Any love you don't use is not kept between turns. And also, servings are not required to play love cards. They're not actions. You just play them, and you can buy cards. Event cards. These are bad cards that give negative effects to their owner. They are employed during the employ phase like other cards, but they usually don't go into other players' decks. Instead, they are placed onto any player's private quarters or chambermaid. We'll get into that later. So here's like Bad Habit. It costs 2 love to buy, and this is -1 victory point. At the end of the game, if you have 4 or more bad habits in your private quarters, each is worth -2 victory points. Anyone who receives this card becomes the owner of the card and suffers the effects. Another event could be illness. Here, this is placed onto a maid in any player's private quarters. That maid loses all of her abilities and victory points. During your starting phase, you may discard a 3 love card from your hand to return the illness to town. Town is, by the way, the sort of shopping area. So let's go through a turn. Like I said, starting phase, if you had a private maid, the effect would take place. Let's say we had one, like Tanya Petrushka. This card, not only is she worth 1 victory point at the end of the game, but during your serving phase, if any of your maids cause you to draw a card, you may draw an additional card, and this effect may only happen once per turn. It may not do anything during our first turn, but anyway, so we have our starting maid in our area. She's not ill, so her effect is in play. And then we go into the serving phase. Now, serving phase is when you play your cards, and usually you only get 1 serving or action per turn. And let's get into that. So, playing a maid card costs 1 serving or action. However, if you look on Genevieve here, she has these 3 symbols highlighted. This symbol means she gets to draw 1 card as soon as you play her. So once I play her, I can draw another card. She also has 1 extra love, which means I get add on to your currency. And then this means 1 extra serving. So if I play a Genevieve, that means now that I have an additional serving, I can play another maid card. So let's say I had played another card, Kagari here. All she does is she gives you 2 more servings. So as soon as I play her, because I chained it, right? It's like Dominion, if you've played Dominion. I had 1 serving in the beginning, so I played Genevieve, which gave me another serving, so I played Kagari, which gives me 2 more servings, so I can play 2 more maid cards. And that's how you can kind of chain more cards. Once you have no more servings to use and all maids, and you've played all your maids, that's when the serving phase is done. Then you count up all the love you have, so I have, in this case, 4 love plus 1, so 5 love. So I could buy Tenalis Trent. This card gives you 3 love when you play her, and each other player draws a card. This also gives you an extra employment. So you know how I said before, you can usually only buy 1 maid card per turn, or 1 card per turn. In this case, an extra employment means I could buy 2 cards that turn. I could buy an extra. Now, whenever you buy a card, like in most deck building games, it goes straight into your discard pile and becomes part of your deck. You also have the option to buy a private maid. So let's say if you had 6 love, there's always 2 of these. So if you bought, let's say, Lalonde Dreyfus, she's worth 2 victory points at the end of the game, and she gives you a power. During your starting phase, you may draw a card, which gives you an extra card basically each turn, which is pretty nice. Whenever somebody buys a private maid, you immediately replace them with another one. And then any love or general maids you bought go into your discard pile. Private maids go into your playing area in front of you. That's kind of your private quarters. So you know, okay, that's my current power. If you buy a private maid and already had one, you just put it over, and now this is your new power. You'll still score points for these cards at the end of the game. When you're done playing all your cards, you discard them, and along with any cards left in your hand, and then you just draw 5 cards from your deck, and you're done. Any remaining love, servings, or employments are lost at this point, and they don't carry over. If you run out of cards in your deck, you reshuffle your discard pile, and that's your new deck. Now, another mechanic in the game is the whole chambermaid system. So here we have Colette. These are cards that you start with in the beginning of the game. If you use 2 servings, you send her to become a chambermaid. What that means is, let's say I played that Kagari, all right, which meant I had 2 servings I didn't use. I could use those 2 servings, and Colette will be placed outside of my deck into my private quarters. Now, Colette is no longer in my draw pile or discard pile, and she's going to score me points at the end of the game. She has a benefit where if you have more Colettes employed than any other player, you get a bonus 5 victory points. So that may be why you would want to put her in the chambermaid area. Because if you have more of them in your chambermaid area, you get more points. Also, if you send someone as a chambermaid, they're no longer in your deck, meaning she no longer clogs up your hand. And then before, like I mentioned, events. You can buy these and you can place them in any player's private quarters, including your own if you wanted to, but usually you're going to be sending these to other players' private quarters. Bad habits, like I said, are sent to a player's private quarters in their little side area, which you get the negative points. And then the illnesses are placed onto private maids. And what happens then is that maid is now ill, which means she loses all of her abilities and does not grant any VP. She counts as though she's not there. And to get rid of this, you could discard a 3 love during your starting phase. And that's pretty much it. Now you keep playing the game by buying cards and adding them to your deck. I'll go through some of the other cards in a second. But the game ends when 2 maid piles in the town run out. And once that happens, the game ends when the current player has finished their turn. Events and love cards are not maids. The private maid stack is regarded as empty if the draw pile is empty. Once 2 piles are empty, that's the end of the game. Then what you do is you count the victory points on all your cards. On the top right, it'll tell you how much points they're worth. You also check any maids in your private quarters, like your chambermaids, and then you count up all the victory points, subtract any penalties from bad habits, Whoever has the most victory points is the winner, and they are the king of maids. So there's a tie. The tied player with the most non-victory point generating maids wins. So let's kind of go into some of these cards here. The crescents, like Azure Crescent here, for each set of 2 or 3 crescent sisters you have as chambermaids, you get bonus VP. So you want to try to collect these and put them in your private quarters as chambermaids. She also gives you an extra employment if you get her. Viola and Rouge are similar in the same thing, but this one, when you play her, you get to draw a card. And Rouge, when you play her, you get an extra love. Saffron Virginie here gives you +2 love when you play her. And then for each set of saffron you have as chambermaids, you gain additional VP. 2 saffrons is 4, 3 is 8, 4 is 12. Kagari and Genevieve I went over before. She just gives you 2 servings, which can be very powerful. And here, draw a card, love, and servings, which is nice. Here we have Moine de Lefebvre. She lets you draw 2 cards when you play her, and she can let you employ 2 extra maids. Already went over Tennis before. Sainsbury. You may exchange one love card from your hand with either a 2 love or a maid with an employee cost of 4 or less from the town. So you can swap those cards out for you. And then we have Annis Greenaway. First off, she's worth 3 points at the end of the game. And she lets you draw 3 cards when you play her and lets you do an extra employment. I'm not going to go through all the private maids. I'll show you like these 2. Like here's Millie Violet. If any of your maids caused you to draw a card, you gain an extra serving. This effect can only happen once per turn, and she's worth 2 points at the end. And then Sora Nakachi is 2 points at the end. You may move 1 event card from a private quarters of your choice to an equivalent place in another player's private quarters. So that way she could move these bad events. But that's pretty much it. You just buy cards, add them to your deck, try to get victory points, and whoever has the most at the end is the winner. So this is essentially Maid Girl Dominion, and I'm down for it. I will admit I was a little skeptical when I saw the cutesy maid art, but underneath all of that is a very solid, breezy, and efficient deck building game. You can start buying cards right away and making those combos go. One really interesting mechanic is the whole private quarters thing. It makes a mechanic that other games have of trashing cards, but making it a scoring opportunity, which is really neat. I love that idea of, all right, if I get rid of this card out of my deck, I can place it here, and if I get more pairs or more whatever, I'll get more, scoring. The serving system is also clever, just like in Dominion. You can't necessarily stock up your deck with just cool card effects. You got to make sure you have the cards that can give you more servings so you can play more cards, otherwise they're going to be useless. I was really impressed with how clear the iconography on the cards works, just the 4 little symbols. Drawing love, serving, buying. And understanding what cards do is really easy at a glance. That and the card effects are really fun and dynamic in how they affect you and other players. I didn't show all the cards in the base set. There's like several others. Even in the ones I showed in the video, I think there's a good variety of powers. I just didn't want to show all the cards in the game. Even the art is actually quite good. I appreciate it's a bunch of different illustrators. It gives the characters a lot of, vibrant looks. Even if it's not necessarily my cup of tea, I think the game has a lot of fun with its aesthetic and its theme. Overall, damn, I'm impressed with Maid Dominion, or Tanto Cuore, and I like the theme of this way more than Dominion, because Dominion doesn't have a theme. It does, but it's barely anything. So if you're someone with high weeb tolerance and or enthusiasm like me, and you want a really solid deck builder in the vein of something like Dominion, I highly recommend this actually. If cutesy maid girls are not your thing, you may be better out with Dominion if you're like embarrassed to play this or something. But if you're cool like me and don't give a shit, and you're down with cutesy maid girls, you're like, yeah, why not? Let's give it a shot. This is a very good game. I was very surprised, and I recommend it. It's a good deck building game.